Thank you all for being here. I'm Nicole Golden. I'm the Executive Director of Texas Gun Sense and also the convener of the statewide Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence. And many of our partners and our champions from this building are here today to express our dismay that the session is coming to a close in 6 days, and we come upon the one-year anniversary of Uvalde tomorrow, and no true solutions to prevent the next shooting have been implemented. And it's really hard for us to say that we're going to leave this session without comprehensive gun reform in place. As families prepare for their vigils, they are in Uvalde today, although we do have a survivor here with us to speak. But let me tell you, though we feel really angry about the outcome, we do not leave this session without victories and milestone achievements as a coalition. We have mobilized thousands and thousands of supporters who called, emailed, visited lawmakers this session. We moved a historic vote out of committee, bipartisan vote, on HB 2744 to raise the age to 21 to purchase semi-automatic rifles. We did that as a coalition, standing side by side with survivors. We made the promise we would do that this session, and we followed through. We were relentless, looking for every opportunity, big and small, to move the needle on gun safety this session. You know, a year ago today, we didn't know about Uvalde, but we knew about El Paso, Santa Fe, Sutherland Springs, Midland, Odessa, and the thousands of gun deaths every year in Texas. And whether it's next session or the session after that, we will be back stronger, more mobilized, more organized than ever to push for common sense gun reform until it's a reality in Texas and we can live our lives free from the threat of gun violence in places we should feel safe. I'm going to now pass the mic to Manuel Rizzo, who is a loved one of Jackie Casadas, a young girl who was killed at Robb Elementary a year ago tomorrow.
There's a customer calling. I'm sorry. A year ago, last night, 19 moms and dads put their children to sleep in their own beds. The next morning, they woke them up to go to school just like every other day. That morning, some said their last goodbyes. The kids were excited to receive awards, and some were looking forward to the start of their summer vacations. Some parents joined them to celebrate their accomplishments and said their last goodbye. Little did they know that they would never see their children again alive. We have since learned of each of their beautiful lives and much more. But what we've also learned is about this place where we stand or we sit here today, a place that is highly regarded where laws are made, yet not a single bill was prioritized to save a human life. From the governor to the Speaker of the House, Lieutenant Governor to the head of every single committee, they are failed legislators. Well, congratulations. You just told every single Texan and every single visitor to Texas that you don't give a damn about the families of Uvalde and the other mass shootings that have occurred. And, more importantly, that will still continue to occur because you didn't do a darn thing. We will remind every single one of your constituents of your failures until you are voted out. That's our promise. That's our justice. Our justice is to make changes at all levels to prevent another Uvalde, another loss of life. And that's also our promise to our family. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Texas Gun Sense. Manuel, thank you for everything that you have done this session. As you all know, the families are not here today, nor will they be here tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have a memorial in the Texas Senate, and we'll pray on these children. But that's not good enough. The fact is that we're leaving here without any particular legislation, which is disgusting. You had 2 mass shootings, more really, but 2 that we saw in the last few weeks. And yet the Senate and the House did absolutely nothing. There are only 2 Republicans in this building that have the courage and fortitude to do what's right. That's Justin Holland and Sam Harless. The rest of the Republicans in this building should be ashamed of themselves. And they should be ashamed of themselves because they did absolutely nothing to protect our kids in this state. Nothing when it came to doing the most common sense of things. Extreme risk protective orders. There's no way in the world we should have mentally ill people walking around with guns. Raising the age limit to 21. There's no way in the world that we should allow an 18, 19, or 20-year-old from buying an AR-15 as easily as buying a can of Coca-Cola at 7-Eleven. They can't buy a beer, they can't buy a pack of cigarettes, and they can't buy a handgun in Texas. But somehow, these people, these Republican leaders, have allowed them to buy AR-15s with impunity. We should close the gun show loophole and have universal background checks. Today, everyone can go into a gun show and buy an AR-15 without so much as even showing your identification. We have a real problem in this state and in this country, but this state is especially broken. This governor likes to compare himself to California. We have double the deaths of California, and they have 9 million more people. That is very disturbing where we are in this state when it comes to gun violence. People need to wake up to what's going on. Because what's happening in Texas, the loose gun laws that have happened in Texas have caused an increase in crime. That's right, there's more crime in Texas because the Republicans have allowed this chaos to happen. You can walk down the street with an AR-15 fully loaded, and there's not one thing that one cop can do about it or say about it. So if you're a Republican of conscience listening at home, you need to vote those people out for sure. You can vote for whoever you want. It doesn't have to be a Democrat. But vote for people that are going to protect your kids, because these won't. These people that you have representing you care more about guns than children. They care more about money and the NRA than your kids. And as horrible as it seems, this nightmare is coming to a theater near you, a grocery store near you, or a school near you. It is happening more and more whether we like it or not. And it's happening more because there's more young men with guns, mostly young men with guns, than there should be. We have to change what's happening in this state, and we have to do it now. And if it's not going to happen in this building where it should happen, then it needs to happen at the voting box. The voting box. The problem is they're making it harder and harder for you to vote every day. So understand what's happening, Texas. Understand that these people don't care about you, and they don't care about your vote. They don't care about one damn thing other than staying in power and making money. I hope that people are listening. I hope you understand. Muchas gracias por su apoyo. I just want to say something in Spanish real quick. Gracias a todos por estar aquí con nosotros. Es obvio que los republicanos en esta Cámara de Representantes y en el Senado no les importa a los niños de Texas. Lo que estamos viendo es la matanza del pueblo hispano, la matanza de los niños de Texas. Estamos viendo una situación donde esta gente puede comprar armas con impunidad, armas que son armas de guerra, y están matando a nuestro público. Y no hay ninguna regulación que han iniciado estos republicanos en esta situación tan importante para tratar de proteger a nuestros hijos. Y eso no se vale, eso no es justo. No estamos viviendo en un país donde hay libertad. Cuando uno no puede salir a la tienda o a la iglesia, ya no es igual. Estamos viviendo un terror que no deberíamos vivir. Muchas gracias a todos, muchas gracias a estas familias, a estas organizaciones por estar aquí con nosotros. Thank you very much.
Good Good morning. I'm State Representative Vikki Goodwin. First, I want to say that my heart goes out to all the victims, particularly as we come upon the one-year anniversary of what happened in Uvalde, as we have just had another mass shooting in Allen at a shopping mall. I agree with the prior speakers that it's very frustrating not getting significant gun safety legislation passed. But I want to share some hope that I have. We have had some shift in opinions. For example, the author of the bill to raise the age for purchasing semi-automatic weapons from 18 to 21 previously had not been in favor of that legislation. Unfortunately, it took a tragedy in his own community for him to change his mind. We had this session a prior police officer file and pass a piece of legislation that would ban Glock switches because he knows how dangerous it is for law enforcement to be on the streets in Texas. We had 2 Republican members vote for raising the age for the purchase of semi-automatic rifles. And so I think we are changing hearts and minds. This is a movement. All movements take an incredibly long time. It takes a lot of pressure. It takes consistency. And I am here to continue the job. I am here to continue pushing for safety so that moms and dads can feel safe sending their kids to school, can feel safe going to a movie, can feel safe going to a parade or a shopping mall. So I will continue working on background checks, sensible legislation that the majority of Texans want to see passed. And with that, I will turn it over. Thank you.
My name is Bea Moorhead. I'm the Executive Director of Texas Impact. We're an interfaith organization, and the faith community has worked tirelessly on this issue all session. So I would start by echoing the frustration of my colleagues and thanking Senator Gutierrez and Representative Goodwin and the others who have tried so hard. I also want to offer an observation that I don't intend to in any way diminish all the good work they've done. There is something contrived and theatrical and performative about the way this issue is being approached. On the floors of the chambers, there are speeches, aspirations. In polling, Texans say they support significant reforms. Somehow none of that is translating into major legislative change. And the missing piece is a kind of mutual accountability in local communities. It is hard to have hard meetings with legislators during the session. It is even harder to have hard conversations with family and friends and fellow church members who we see regularly in the community. It's hard to start those conversations, and it's uncomfortable when they go awry. But I am always reminded of something that another senator, Senator Zaffarini, likes to say and has said often on the floor of the Senate, hablando se entienden la gente. Without talking to each other, there's no way we're going to make progress. So Texas Impact will be turning our attention to helping our members start those hard conversations in their local communities, with lawmakers, with candidates for office, with you, the media. And we're going to do that starting in June of 2023, not January of 2025. Because I, myself, and I think everyone else here, does not want to have this same press conference 2 years from now. Thank you.
My name is Stephen Kling. I'm a decorated combat veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, a gun owner, the father of 2 boys, and a leading member in the Texas chapter of Gifford's Gun Owners for Safety. As a member of the United States Armed Forces, a commitment to protecting the people of this country was and remains a core value. I do not see that commitment, those same values reflected in a modern gun culture that has been hijacked by the gun lobby and driven by billion-dollar marketing campaigns that further paranoia and irresponsible cowboy fantasies. Those good guy with a gun fantasies should have been laid to rest with the children of Uvalde, but they persist. When testifying before this legislative body, I've spent countless hours with survivors, people this government has already failed in the most profound way you can fail a citizen, choosing an industry and its profits over the lives and the pursuit of happiness of its people. The latest example in the current session, HB 2744, a reasonable and modest measure to increase the purchasing age of certain high-capacity semi-automatic weapons, was sponsored by Representative Tracy King of Uvalde. But the rest of this legislative body was too cowardly to let that even small measure get a vote. As a Texan, I will not and do not accept the indifference to our safety that our elected officials are showing us, even in the wake of the most recent mass shooting in Allen, Texas. Governor Abbott pretends to address the issue, insisting the solution lies in treating mental illness alone, as if we're the only developed country where mental illness exists. No, Governor, we're the only developed country where those suffering from violent mental illness and those who are suffering from so much hatred that they will ink enormous swastika tattoos on their body have quick and easy access to firearms designed for no other purpose than to cause mass casualties and death. And where some conveniently pretend it was always this way and that this carnage is just part of the freedom that our founding fathers had envisioned for us hundreds of years ago. The representatives in this building have chosen to create districts that ensure their re-election, but in doing so have placed themselves in a hostage situation to the most extreme elements of their party and drowning out the voices of reason. They've chosen personal ambition over what's right for the rest of us, and the result is a government incapable of responding to the will of the majority. So to the 9.6 million registered Texas voters who didn't show up in the last election, please ask yourself this: is it really going to take the murder of my own child or my loved one for me to start caring about this? Because we need you right now. It shouldn't have to affect us personally to start to care. We need each other, and we need each and every one of you to find your voice, and we are here to help you find it. Please take action today. No matter how small, take some action and contact one of the organizations you've heard from today. We are at a moment in history where we either step up and vote these people out or make peace with living in a state where the sudden, violent death of someone we love is a very real possibility.
Good morning. My name is Robin Breed, and I'm a volunteer with Moms Demand Action. This week, parents and children across our state are celebrating the end of the school year. Schools are busy with award ceremonies and kindergarten graduations, teacher appreciation events, and end-of-year parties. All of these traditions and celebrations that cycle through each passing school year now have new emotions attached to them: fear and sorrow. Today, Texans are collectively remembering the 21 lives taken a year ago tomorrow at Robb Elementary, as well as the recent 5-year mark of the Santa Fe school shooting. 5 of the deadliest mass shootings in our country have taken place in Texas. The rate of guns homicide in Texas has increased 90% since 2012. And our Republican lawmakers' response to all of this bloodshed is to do nothing. The sadness and apprehension felt this week by so many parents and children is only heightened by lawmakers in action as the legislative session comes to a close. We are all now painfully aware that the party in control of both the House and the Senate do not value the lives of Texans. We know that because of their profound silence on this issue, and we see it in their inaction. Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and Speaker Dade Phelan could have chosen to prioritize gun violence this session, but they didn't. No meaningful gun legislation was even allowed to be heard in either chamber this session. We are grieving when we should be celebrating, grieving what has happened, grieving for all of the things that should have happened and didn't, and grieving for what might still happen. That grief looks like a mother scared to drop her child off at school every single day. That grief looks like a mother volunteering at her child's school every day this week because she's afraid something might happen. All of this communal grief is forcing us to live every day in fear. To the families of Uvalde and Santa Fe, know that we have not forgotten you. Know that our heart breaks for you this week as you navigate the end of the school year. The Republican members of this legislature have forgotten you, but we will never quit fighting for your families and for all of the families of this predictable, rampant gun violence. For all of the parents that are trying to get through this week and not worry, you are not being unreasonable. Your fear is legitimate. They do not care that children are dying in school. They do not care that teachers are being asked to be human shields. They do not care that families are being murdered at the mall, at church, while shopping at Walmart. They do not care. This isn't hyperbole. This is observing the fact that the people who have the power to do something continue to do nothing. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Greg Hanch. I serve as Executive Director of NAMI Texas, which is the Texas affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. At NAMI Texas, we stand for access to the right mental health care at the right time. We stand for eliminating stigmas, myths, and discrimination that keep people from seeking treatment. Mental illnesses are discrete, treatable medical conditions. They are not character flaws or weaknesses. Most people with mental health conditions are no more likely to be violent than anyone else. Shortly after my career started with NAMI Texas, a mass shooting occurred at Sandy Hook Elementary School. In response, there was a bipartisan call for mental health reform, and the Texas legislature invested hundreds of millions of new dollars in funding for mental health in that next legislative session. And they also left a lot on the table. We all know what has happened since then. More mass shootings, more identification of mental illness as the problem, and more mixed results in policymaking. While we very much appreciate the efforts that have been made to address mental health, we reject the notion that the sole solution to preventing mass shootings is improving mental health policies. Researchers have found that only 8% of mass shooters had a serious mental illness. Addressing mental illness must be part of a much broader conversation about preventing gun violence. Let me be clear here. Radicalism is not a mental illness. Terrorism is not a mental illness, and hate is not a mental illness. There is no reliable psychiatric cure for angry, often young men with access to guns who are committed to perpetrating violence. We should instead put our focus on evidence-based risk factors for gun violence, like impulsivity and a history of violence. We have to address the real issues at hand, such as the fact that it's easier in our country to get a gun than it is to get mental health care, and the unfortunate reality that self-directed gun violence is fueling our nation's suicide epidemic. The majority of firearm deaths are suicides, and firearms are the most common method used for suicide. Let us not forget about the deep mental health traumas that are caused by gun violence. We can prevent that. Sadly, the legislature has once again failed to holistically address gun violence. That is not to say that nothing has been done to address mental health. This session, they funded psychosis treatment, improved provider accountability, expanded bed capacity, and made crisis services more available. They've also missed big opportunities to improve insurance coverage, promote upstream mental health interventions, and address criminal justice involvement. But like I said, the solutions have to be bigger than mental health care. Proposals like safe gun storage and firearm suicide prevention measures should be the low-hanging fruit. It shouldn't be controversial. But almost none of these bills are going to make it. How about legislation to temporarily restrict firearms from a person who a judge determines to be imminently dangerous? These bills didn't even get a hearing. While certain important and meaningful bills to address mental health and school safety are likely heading to the governor's desk, there has been a lack of action on gun reform. And that is of great concern to the Texas mental health community.
Hi, my name is Alexa Browning, and I'm a Senior Policy Associate with March for Our Lives. I joined March for Our Lives because I wanted to make a difference for my own generation and generations to come. I believe that we deserve to live in a world free from the fear of gun violence, where white supremacy doesn't justify police killings of black men and 9-year-olds don't have PTSD from surviving a shooting. Last year, my dedication to the work I do at March for Our Lives became a passion. After the heartbreaking loss of 21 lives in Uvalde, Texas, we mobilize and organize rallies across the country to speak out against the stagnation of gun violence legislation that is putting kids in the line of fire. This work felt especially personal to me as a native Texan whose family comes from a small town like Uvalde. The events in Parkland, Florida, which started March for Our Lives, changed my perspective on gun violence, but this was personal to me and hit close to home as a Texan. As a young person in America, gun violence has always been personal, but it reached a new level 364 days ago. Last summer, March for Our Lives stood in solidarity with the Uvalde community and survivors to ensure that their pain and loss would not be forgotten and instead would be channeled into action. Over the summer, we called out Governor Abbott and told him that it is time to raise the age to purchase assault weapons, just like the one that was used in the Uvalde shooting. The solution is widely popular, with 76% of Texans supporting it regardless of party. And yet, cowardly Governor Abbott and pro-gun Texas legislators still have done nothing to protect Texas children. There is blood on Governor Abbott and his allies' hands. Just last week, Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick were willing to suspend the rules of procedure to swiftly pass a TikTok conspiracy bill, but they have done absolutely nothing to save the lives of Texas children. When have they ever cared that much about stopping kids from being used as target practice? Texas must do something to stop this gun violence epidemic. Laws like raising the minimum age to purchase semi-automatic weapons could have prevented the tragic shooting in Uvalde. But spineless state leaders blocked this legislation from even getting a vote in the House. The Texas session ends in 6 days and there has been no progress on gun safety. We have been screaming at the top of our lungs to demand change, but our leaders are not listening. The bipartisan committee vote in favor of raising the age proves that passing gun laws in Texas is possible, but unless it moves to a House vote, it's nothing more than performative politics. Texas legislators, you don't get a participation trophy for passing through committee. We need actual laws that will save lives. I want to see a Texas that is free from the fear, pain, and trauma that gun violence causes. Not one more Texas should die from a senseless act of gun violence.
Hi, everyone. Christina Delgado from Santa Fe. I'm also the Southwest Regional Advocacy Associate for Community Justice. 5 years and 5 days ago, 17-year-old Chris Stone retreated with 7 other students to a storage closet in the art rooms at Santa Fe High School. Chris knew he had to save his friends. He held the door shut, and that shooter took one step back and with his father's sawed-off shotgun, took a shot, killing Chris. His body remained in front of that door, saving those 7 lives. Tomorrow, 1 year ago, 4th graders dodged rounds of .556 fired rapidly from an AR-15 while covering themselves in the blood of their classmates. They retreated to pick up cell phones, to call 911, because they just wanted to see their parents again. And here in this body, we have leadership. We have lawmakers afraid to push a button and vote. In the words of Kim Rubio, did you think we would go home? We'll continue to fight as mothers, as fathers, as a coalition, and as survivors to help save the next community and to support the next families that this body felt was not important enough to pass preventative and intervention measures
to break these cycles of violence in our community. We'll be there to support the communities that this body felt was not a priority to invest in their citizens and support those directly affected by this senseless public health crisis of gun violence, especially in communities of color who are disproportionately affected at a higher rate. In the words of Berlinda, the grandmother for Anne-Marie Jo, we are not done. Tomorrow we will honor the 21 beautiful lives that were brutally and senselessly stolen from 21 now destroyed families and all those who have come before. This session is not the end. Until we pass measures that are going to prevent other communities and other families from having to experience what my community, the Uvalde community, El Paso, and so many others have experienced in losing their loved ones and burying children, we will be here to ensure that each lawmaker that has the ability to prevent these measures from happening, we will hold them accountable. So I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank all of the speakers. I want to thank Representative Goodwin, Senator Gutierrez, for everything that you have done for these survivors and for my community. I want to thank Manuel for coming and speaking on behalf of not just Jackie, but those 21 Uvalde families that could not make it here today because they are preparing for the worst day of their lives 1 year later. It does not go away for these families. It did not go away for my friends' families, and it did not go away for my family. I want to thank the coalition partners for all of their support. As a surviving family and coming from a survivor community, they have been monumental in us being able to move forward and continue this fight. And so I'd like to open it up for questions if anyone has any.
Senator, this is a question for you and for your fellow legislators. How do you respond to colleagues who insist that mental health is the solution?
Well, I think Mr. Kling said it best. We're not the only country in the world that suffers from mental health. I'm pretty sure that every country in the world suffers from mental health. This is a unique problem to the United States. We have unfettered access to weaponry. I've never seen, for all of my years in the session, I've never seen the NRA lobby so hard as they did this time. They brought their professional lobbyist and they brought their professional expert, John Lott, here. John Lott is some economist that came out of California and wrote a book many years ago and said, more guns equal less crime. And I apologize to the media, but that's the biggest amount of bullshit I've ever heard in my life. More guns equals more crime, and we are experiencing that right now. You can talk about any crime, gang violence, the mass shootings that we're experiencing, more suicides, more everything. You can get a gun. An 18-year-old can get an AR-15 with impunity in this state. It is insanity where we are. There is not an amount of money that you could increase on mental health. And by the way, Texas is dead last in this whole United States. We're dead last on positive mental health outcomes and positive mental health funding. We put in more money. It isn't going to matter because we have not addressed the common denominator, and that is the unfettered access to weaponry amongst young people and amongst mentally ill people. The reality is, without extreme risk protective orders, see something, say something means nothing. It means nothing because you can't take those guns away from people that shouldn't have them. Thank you.
What does it tell you that, again, the last speech I saw you deliver on the Senate floor, the Lieutenant Governor and other of your colleagues used every parliamentary tactic in the book to essentially curtail anything that you were trying to say? you're not even willing to actually have a debate on the House or Senate floor about this particular topic, even if it's modest.
Yeah, I amended 3 times. I tried to amend different bills during this session. Twice appealed the ruling of the chair. And this last time, the lieutenant governor, felt that he was going to change the rules altogether to his liking. There are no more rules in the Texas Senate. There haven't been in a long time, and the very few that were left, he's now eviscerated. The fact is, Dan Patrick doesn't care about our kids. Dan Patrick doesn't care about what's happening right now in this state. He only cares about his own ambition, and he's going to break every rule there is. He's not going to have this discussion on the Senate floor because they're afraid, and you've heard different people say this. They're afraid of their right-wing fringe coming at them. I hope that somebody comes at them, some Republican of conscience that says, I care more about kids than guns, because that's what needs to happen. We need to have real debate on this issue. And if we're not going to have debate, then we're going to have that fight at the polling booth, and it's just going to take time. But it's the hard work of these people. For me and myself, I think you all know this, and this has changed my life entirely. I never in the world thought I'd see the kind of horror that I've seen in those videos and that imagery. In those moments, I wasn't kidding last week when I said police were throwing up. I think we all saw that Sunday night. Now the world has seen the police outside that room throwing up and inside that room throwing up. They couldn't. I don't know if that was from their own failure or from what the images that they were seeing, but what I saw in every bit of those body cams, I will never, ever erase from my mind. I see those images every night and every morning, and I will not erase that from my mind. I could only wish this. I wish 2 things. I wish it was May 23rd, 2022. I wish I didn't know any of y'all. I wish I lived in relative obscurity. I wish May 24th would never have happened. And my deep-seated, strange desire and request is for Dan Patrick, Dave Phelan, and Greg Abbott to watch those hundreds of hours of body cam footage. I promise you, they have seen none of it. None of it. They don't have the fortitude to see it. They don't have the fortitude to see how their cops failed and how those children died. They don't have the courage. They don't have anything. They're horrible men.
Sir, you spoke of the NRA and the way they've changed their narrative. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I know, growing up it was about hunting and sportsmanship, and now it's more about safety and defense.
Yeah, the NRA of my youth is not the NRA of today. We can trace a lot of that back to Columbine. They realized the power of their lobby. They spent tens of millions of dollars in the 2000 election in Florida alone to help George W. Bush get elected there. And ever since then, they've been much more active. And since the repeal of the assault weapons ban in 2004, it's been all about sales. It's about sales, it's about sales, it's about sales. And what they do is they take advantage of the chaos and the uncertainty in this world, and they prey on people's fears and their paranoia about government, and they use it to sell weapons. And a lot of the people that think that they're our opposition, a lot of people that consider themselves two-heirs, I consider a lot of them victims of a multi-billion-dollar marketing campaign to make them afraid. And all I have to say to them is this: all we're asking of you is to back measures that when you sell a weapon to someone else, that you making sure that you're absolutely certain that you're looking after the safety of your community. And I cannot believe that that is too much to ask.
Anything else? Thank you, so much.